What if the person you were about to marry, the person you trusted with your entire future, was living a lie so massive that it would destroy not just your relationship, but multiple lives in the process? I'm Jordan. I'm 30 years old, and I was 3 months away from marrying the woman I thought was my soulmate, until I discovered a secret so devastating that it didn't just end our engagement, it ended careers, dreams, and exposed a scandal that rocked an entire university department. This is the true story of how I discovered my fiance's betrayal and the impossible decision I had to make. Stay with me, because what happened next, nobody saw coming. Let me take you back 5 years. It was a crisp autumn evening in Boston, and I was at a coffee shop near MIT, working on a freelance design project. The place was packed with students cramming for midterms. The smell of fresh espresso hanging in the air, mixed with the sound of frantic typing and hushed conversations. That's when she walked in. Julia. I still remember everything about that moment. She had this confident stride, blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing an oversized sweater and carrying what looked like half a library's worth of textbooks. She looked stressed, exhausted, and somehow radiant. She scanned the crowded cafe looking for a seat, and our eyes met. I don't believe in love at first sight, but I believe in something at first sight. Connection, curiosity, a pull you can't explain. I gestured to the empty chair at my table. You look like you could use a seat more than I need the extra space. Her face broke into this grateful smile, and she had a slight German accent when she spoke. You are a lifesaver. Thank you. That's how it started. A simple act of kindness in a crowded coffee shop. We talked for hours that night. I learned she was from Munich, Germany, and had come to the United States to pursue her master's degree in international business. She was brilliant, driven, passionate about economics and global markets. She spoke 3 languages fluently and had this infectious enthusiasm when she talked about her dreams. I want to work for the United Nations one day, she told me, her eyes lighting up. I want to help developing countries build sustainable economic systems. I want to make a real difference, you know? I was captivated. Not just by her beauty, but by her mind, her ambition, her heart. I told her about my work as a graphic designer, how I'd built my own freelance business from scratch, my love for hiking and photography. We discovered we both loved obscure indie films, that we'd both traveled through Southeast Asia, that we both put way too much hot sauce on everything. When the coffee shop closed at midnight, we moved our conversation to a 24-hour diner. When the sun came up, we were still talking. I walked her back to her apartment as the city woke up around us. Before she went inside, she turned to me with this shy smile. This was really nice, Jordan. Unexpectedly nice. Can I see you again? I asked, already knowing her answer from the way she was looking at me. I would like that very much. The next 3 years were honestly the happiest of my life. Julia and I were inseparable. Despite her demanding academic schedule and my unpredictable freelance work, we made it work. We had to. Being apart felt wrong, like something essential was missing. She'd study at my apartment, her textbooks spread across my dining table, while I worked on design projects. I'd make her coffee at 2 in the morning during her exam weeks. She'd force me to take breaks, dragging me out for walks along the Charles River when I'd been staring at my screen for too long. We explored the city together, found hidden restaurants in Chinatown, attended free concerts in the park, spent Sundays at the Museum of Fine Arts. She introduced me to German Christmas markets and taught me to make authentic schnitzel. I taught her the art of a perfect American barbecue and took her on her first road trip through New England to see the fall foliage. Her student visa allowed her to stay for the duration of her program plus some practical training time. We knew from the beginning that we were racing against the clock. Either she'd have to return to Germany or we'd have to figure out a way for her to stay. But We were in love, young and optimistic and convinced we could overcome anything. "What if you came to Germany with me?" she asked one night, about a year into our relationship. We were lying on a blanket in Boston Common, watching the stars. "I've thought about it," I admitted. "My business is mostly remote anyway. I could probably make it work." "Or," she said, propping herself up on her elbow to look at me, "or maybe I find a way to stay here, with you." That's when marriage first entered the conversation, not as a romantic gesture, but as a practical solution, a way to stay together. But something shifted after that conversation. What started as a logistical discussion became something more. We weren't just talking about visas and paperwork anymore. We were talking about forever. 2 years into our relationship, on the same date we first met, I proposed. I took her back to that same coffee shop where we'd first locked eyes. I'd worked with the owner to close the place early, just for us. I'd hung string lights and filled the space with candles. Our song, Home, by Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros, played softly in the background. When she walked in and saw what I'd done, tears were already streaming down her face. I got down on one knee in the exact spot where she'd sat that first night. "Julia, you walked into this coffee shop 5 years ago looking for a seat, and you found a home instead. At least I hope you did, because you became my home. Marry me." She couldn't even speak. She just nodded, crying and laughing at the same time, and I slipped the ring, a simple sapphire, her favorite stone, onto her finger. Everyone said we were perfect together. Her friends from university, my family, our colleagues. Even strangers could see it. That easy chemistry, that obvious love. "You guys are relationship goals," her best friend Sarah would say. "Seriously, Jordan, you better not screw this up." I had no intention of screwing it up. Julia was my person, my future, the mother of my future children, my partner in every sense of the word. We set a wedding date, a spring ceremony, intimate and beautiful, mixing American and German traditions. Julia was handling most of the planning while finishing her degree. She was in her final semester, working on her thesis, stressed but excited about finally graduating and starting her career. She'd been interviewing for positions at consulting firms and international organizations. Her dream of working for the UN wasn't far-fetched anymore. She had the credentials, the language skills, the passion. Everything was falling into place. Or so I thought. It started with small things I didn't even notice at the time. Julia had always been dedicated to her studies, but in her final semester, something shifted. She became obsessed. She'd spend hours in meetings with her thesis advisor, Professor Richard Morrison. She'd come home late, exhausted, sometimes on the verge of tears. "Morrison is brutal," she'd say, collapsing onto our couch. "He rejects everything. Nothing is good enough. I rewrote my entire third chapter, and he basically told me to start over." I'd comfort her, make her tea, rub her shoulders. "You're brilliant, Jules. He's just pushing you to be your best. You've got this." But the stress was taking a toll. She lost weight, stopped sleeping well, became distant and distracted. "Maybe you should talk to the department head," I suggested one night. "If Morrison is being unreasonable, there must be some recourse." "No," she snapped, more forcefully than I expected. Then softer, "No, I can handle it. I just need to meet his standards. This thesis is everything, Jordan. Without it, I don't graduate. Without graduating, my visa situation becomes complicated. I can't screw this up." I understood the pressure. I really did. So I tried to be supportive, even as I watched the woman I loved disappear under the weight of academic stress. She started spending more time on campus, late nights in the library, extra office hours with Morrison, study groups that went until midnight. I barely saw her. When I did see her, she was different, jumpy, secretive about her phone.
always exhausted. "Is everything okay?" I asked one night, about 2 months before our wedding. "You seem, I don't know, different." "I'm just stressed," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Thesis defense is in 3 weeks, wedding planning, the visa paperwork. It's a lot. I can help more with the wedding stuff, take some of the pressure off." "No, it's fine. I've got it." But she didn't have it. I could see her unraveling. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were usually our date nights, the one evening we'd committed to spending together no matter what. But Julia had texted me earlier saying she had to stay late on campus for an emergency thesis revision with Professor Morrison. I was disappointed, but understanding. Her defense was only 2 weeks away. I decided to surprise her. I'd bring dinner to campus, her favorite Thai food from the place near our apartment. Maybe we could eat together in her department lounge, steal even an hour together. I walked into the business school building around 8:30 p.m. The place was mostly empty, just a few students scattered in study rooms. I knew where Morrison's office was. Julia had pointed it out once when I'd picked her up. The hallway was quiet, fluorescent lights humming, my footsteps echoing on the tile floor. I saw that his office door was closed, but light spilled from underneath. I was about to knock when I heard something that stopped me cold. Laughter. Julia's laughter, but not stressed laughter, not academic laughter. Intimate laughter. My hand froze halfway to the door. Something in my gut twisted. I heard Morrison's voice, low and too warm. "You're incredible, you know that." And Julia's response, soft and affectionate. "Stop, you're going to make me blush." My mind tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were just having a friendly conversation. Maybe I was reading too much into tone. But then I heard something that shattered that rationalization. The sound of movement, a chair scraping, and then silence. The kind of silence that speaks louder than words. I stood there frozen, my heart pounding so hard I thought they might hear it through the door. Every instinct screamed at me to burst in, to confront what I suspected was happening. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds, I heard Julia's voice again. "We can't keep doing this. The thesis is in 2 weeks. After that, you'll be graduated, free to marry your fiancé and forget this ever happened. I know." The bag of Thai food slipped from my hands, containers hitting the floor with a dull thud. The office door flew open. Julia stood there, her blouse disheveled, her hair messed up in a way that told me everything I needed to know. Our eyes met. I watched the color drain from her face, watched panic replace the warmth that had been there seconds before. "Jordan, this isn't... I can..." But I was already walking away, my legs moving on autopilot, my mind unable to process what I'd just discovered. She ran after me, her voice echoing down the hallway. "Jordan, please stop. Let me explain." I didn't stop, couldn't stop. If I stopped, if I turned around, I'd have to confront the reality that the woman I was supposed to marry in 2 months had been sleeping with her professor. I made it outside before the fury hit.
Julia caught up with me in the parking lot, grabbing my arm. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice cold and unfamiliar even to my own ears. "Please, just listen." "How long?" I interrupted, finally turning to face her. "How long have you been sleeping with him?" The tears were already streaming down her face, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her. "It's not what you think." "How long, Julia?" She flinched at my volume. A couple of students walking by turned to stare, but I didn't care. 3 months, she whispered. 3 months. A quarter of a year. While she was planning our wedding, while she was wearing my ring, while she was sleeping in my bed. Why? The question came out broken.
He was going to fail me, she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. My thesis wasn't good enough. He said I'd never graduate, that I'd wasted 2 years and thousands of dollars. I panicked, Jordan. My visa, our wedding, everything depended on me graduating. I didn't know what to do. So you slept with him? It wasn't a question. He suggested it, she said, as if that made it better. He said he'd make sure my thesis passed, that he'd guarantee I'd graduate with honors. I laughed, actually laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You sold yourself for a grade? I sold myself for us, she shouted back, for our future. If I didn't graduate, I'd have to go back to Germany. We'd be separated. Everything we'd planned would fall apart. I did this for us. Don't you dare, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. Don't you dare pretend this was for us. This was for you. You took the easy way out instead of doing the work, instead of trusting yourself, instead of trusting me to help you figure it out. I was scared. So you cheated, on your thesis and on me. She reached for me again, and I stepped back. Jordan, please, I love you. This didn't mean anything. It was just transactional, a means to an end. Just transactional, I repeated. You prostituted yourself for a passing grade, and you think that makes it better? Don't say it like that. That's exactly what it is, Julia. I was shouting again, months of trust and love and future plans crumbling to dust. You made a deal, your body, for academic favors, and you did it while wearing my engagement ring. I pulled the ring off my own finger, the simple tungsten band we'd chosen together, and threw it at her feet. We're done. The engagement is off. The wedding is off. Everything is off. No, she fell to her knees, sobbing. No, Jordan, please. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but we can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can work through it. Work through it? I was incredulous. You didn't accidentally kiss someone at a bar, Julia. You carried on a months-long affair with your professor. You lied to me every single day. Every time you said you were working on your thesis, every time you came home late, every time you said you loved me while his hands were still on you. Stop! Please stop! I trusted you, I said, and finally I felt something besides anger. I felt the grief, the loss. I trusted you completely. I was ready to spend my life with you, and you threw it away for a grade. I started walking toward my car. What about me? She called after me, her voice desperate. What am I supposed to do? The wedding is in 2 months. Everyone knows. My family is flying in from Germany. What am I supposed to tell them? I turned back one last time. Tell them the truth. Tell them their daughter is a liar and a cheat. Tell them she destroyed her own future. Jordan, and Julia, I added, I'm reporting Morrison. To the university, to the department head, to whoever will listen. What he did was unethical and probably illegal. He used his position of power to coerce a student. I'm not letting him get away with it. The fear that flashed across her face told me she understood the implications. If you do that, I'm finished, she said. They'll investigate. They'll know what I did. My degree, my reputation, everything. Should have thought about that before you slept with him. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her sobbing in the parking lot. I didn't go home. I couldn't face our apartment, our bed, our life. I drove to my brother's place and knocked on his door at 10 p.m. Mike took one look at my face and pulled me inside. What happened? And I told him everything. The next 72 hours were a blur of rage, grief, and administrative meetings. I stayed at Mike's place, ignoring Julia's constant calls and texts. She left voicemails begging me to talk to her, to reconsider, to give her another chance. I deleted them all, without listening. What I did listen to was the university's Title IX office when I reported Professor Richard Morrison. The coordinator, a woman named Dr. Patricia Chen, was professional and thorough. She took detailed notes as I explained what I'd discovered, what I'd heard through the door, Julia's confession about their arrangement. This is extremely serious, Dr. Chen said. If what you're telling me is true, Professor Morrison committed a severe breach of ethics and potentially violated several university policies regarding relationships with students and quid pro quo sexual harassment. It's all true, I said, and I think you'll find that Julia wasn't the first. Men like Morrison don't start with a 3-month affair. They have a pattern. Dr. Chen's expression suggested I might be right. The investigation moved quickly, too quickly for Julia to do any damage control. Within a week, I learned through the university grapevine what was happening. Morrison was placed on immediate administrative leave. His classes were reassigned. His access to campus was restricted. Julia was called in for interviews. Her thesis was put under review. Questions were raised about whether her work was even her own, or if Morrison had given her unfair advantages beyond just agreeing to pass her. Other students started coming forward. Whispers became testimonies. Morrison had a history, not as blatant as what he'd done with Julia, but inappropriate comments, boundary violations, suggestions of favoritism for those who were friendly. Julia's world collapsed. Her thesis defense was postponed indefinitely pending the investigation. Her graduation was put on hold. Her student visa, which depended on her enrollment status, became precarious. She tried to reach me again, showed up at Mike's place, at my regular coffee shop, even at my parents' house. My mom, bless her heart, opened the door to find Julia standing there with red-rimmed eyes and a desperate expression. "Mrs. Patterson, please," Julia begged. "I need to talk to Jordan. I know I made a terrible mistake, but he won't even listen to me." My mom, who had loved Julia, who had welcomed her into our family, who had been excitedly planning the mother-son dance at our wedding, looked at her with cold disappointment. "Julia, I think you should leave. Please, You hurt my son. You betrayed him in one of the worst ways possible. And from what I understand, you did it not out of love or passion, but for personal gain. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. I love him." Love is more than a feeling, dear. It's a choice, a commitment. You chose to betray that commitment. Now you have to live with the consequences. My mom closed the door. When she called to tell me about the encounter, I could hear the sadness in her voice. She'd liked Julia. We all had. "Are you okay, honey?" she asked. "I don't know, Mom," I admitted. "I feel empty, like someone scooped out everything inside me and left this hollow shell." "That's grief," she said gently. "You're not just losing Julia. You're losing the future you thought you'd have together. That's worth mourning." She was right. I wasn't just angry. I was devastated. I'd imagined our wedding day, our honeymoon in Germany, meeting her extended family, buying our first house, having kids, growing old together. All of it gone. Erased by her choices.
2 weeks after I discovered the affair, Julia made one last desperate attempt to fix things. She somehow got past building security and was waiting outside my apartment door when I came home from a client meeting. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was unwashed, her eyes swollen, her hands shaking. "Julia, you can't be here." "Please," she interrupted, her voice hoarse. "Just 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door. We stood in the entryway, not going further into the apartment. I didn't want her in our space. It wasn't our space anymore. "Talk," I said. "I'm being expelled," she said flatly. "The investigation concluded. They found that Morrison and I violated the academic integrity policy. He's been fired. I'm being expelled with no degree. 5 years of work, gone." I felt nothing hearing this. No satisfaction, no pity, just numbness. "My student visa is being terminated. I have 30 days to leave the country. I'm going back to Germany in disgrace.
No degree, no career prospects. I'll be a cautionary tale, the student who slept with her professor and lost everything. I'm sorry that happened, I said. And I was. Not sorry enough to forgive her, but sorry that it had come to this. But you made your choices. I know, she whispered. I know I did. And I've had 2 weeks to think about why I made them. Do you want to know what I realized? I didn't answer. I was so obsessed with success, with achieving my goals, with proving myself, that I lost sight of what actually mattered. I had everything that mattered right here. You, us, our love. And I threw it away because I was too proud to ask for help, too scared to admit I was struggling, too convinced that I had to succeed at any cost. She took a shaky breath. Morrison preyed on that. He saw my desperation and he exploited it. And yes, I let him. I made the choice to go along with it. I own that. Is there a point to this? I asked, my voice tired. The point is that I understand now what I lost, and I would give anything, to go back and make different choices, to come to you when I was struggling instead of going to him, to trust in us instead of taking the coward's way out. She pulled something from her pocket, my engagement ring. She'd been wearing it on a chain around her neck. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said, holding it out to me. I know that. But I needed you to know that losing you is a greater punishment than anything the university could do to me. Losing your trust, your love, your future, that's the real consequence of my choices. I took the ring, cold and heavy in my palm. I hope you find someone who deserves you, Julia said, tears streaming down her face. Someone who has the courage and integrity I lacked. Someone who will choose you every single time, no matter how scared they are. She turned to leave. Julia, I called out. She stopped, turning back with desperate hope in her eyes. I hope you learn from this. I hope you become the person you pretended to be, for your own sake, not for mine. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Goodbye, Jordan. Goodbye, Julia. She left, and I never saw her again.
The weeks after Julia returned to Germany were strange. I went through the mechanical motions of canceling a wedding, calling the venue, the caterer, the photographer, sending messages to guests explaining that the wedding was off, keeping the details vague. Things didn't work out. We wish each other well. Most people respected my privacy. A few pushed for details. I didn't give them. Julia's friends reached out occasionally. Sarah, her best friend, called me a week after Julia left. I didn't know, she said immediately. She never told me what she was doing. If I'd known, I would have stopped her. I believe you, I said. For what it's worth, she's devastated. Not that you should care, but she's completely destroyed by what she did to you. Good, I said, surprising myself with the coldness in my voice. She should be. There was a long pause. Are you okay, Jordan? No, I admitted. But I will be. And slowly, painfully, I was. I threw myself into work, took on new clients, challenging projects that required all my focus and creativity. I updated my portfolio, rebranded my business, pushed myself to grow professionally in ways I'd been putting off. I started therapy, found a good counselor who specialized in betrayal trauma and relationship grief. What you're feeling is normal, Dr. Rodriguez told me in one of our early sessions. You trusted someone completely, and they violated that trust in a fundamental way. That creates a wound that takes time to heal. I feel stupid. Like I should have seen the signs, should have known something was wrong. Hindsight is 20/20, and people who cheat often become very good at hiding it. The blame lies with Julia, not with you for trusting your partner. Those sessions helped.
Slowly, I started to process not just the betrayal, but the loss, the future I'd mourned, the life I'd envisioned. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during my relationship, started hiking again, something I'd loved before Julia, but had let fall by the wayside, took a photography workshop, and remembered why I'd fallen in love with visual storytelling in the first place. My brother Mike was a constant support. He'd show up at my apartment with pizza and beer, letting me vent when I needed to, distracting me with terrible action movies when I didn't want to think. "You're going to be okay," he told me one night, about 3 months after everything fell apart. "You know that, right?" I'm starting to believe it. And I was.
About 6 months after Julia left, I received an email from her. I'd blocked her number, but apparently not her email address. Subject line: "I'm sorry and goodbye." My finger hovered over the delete button. Part of me wanted to erase it without reading, to leave that chapter of my life firmly closed. But curiosity won out. The email was long. Pages of reflection, apology, and accountability. She told me she'd started therapy in Germany, that she was working with her counselor to understand why she'd made the choices she'd made, addressing patterns of perfectionism and fear that had driven her to compromise her integrity. She'd enrolled in a different university to complete her degree, starting over in a new program with new professors. She was doing it the right way this time, she said. The hard way. She'd told her family the full truth about what happened, faced their disappointment and anger and shame. She was rebuilding those relationships slowly. She wasn't reaching out to ask for forgiveness or a second chance, she clarified. She was reaching out to take full accountability for her actions and to tell me that the pain she'd caused me was her greatest regret. "You deserved so much better than what I gave you," she wrote. "You deserved honesty, loyalty, courage. You deserved a partner who would fight for your relationship instead of destroying it. I'm sorry I wasn't that person. I'm working every day to become someone who would be." She ended with, "I hope you found happiness, Jordan, or that you're on your way to finding it. You deserve every good thing. Please don't let what I did make you afraid to love again. The failure was mine, not yours, not love's." I read the email 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and went for a walk. I thought about Julia, about the woman I'd fallen in love with in that coffee shop 5 years ago, about the woman who'd betrayed me so completely, about whether they were the same person or if I'd been in love with an illusion. I thought about forgiveness, whether I could forgive her, whether I even wanted to. Dr. Rodriguez and I had talked about forgiveness in therapy. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation, she'd said. It doesn't mean forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. Forgiveness means releasing the anger and resentment so they don't continue to poison your life. It's something you do for yourself, not for the other person. Standing in the park, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, I realized I was ready to forgive Julia. Not because she deserved it, not because her email had magically fixed anything, but because I was tired of carrying the anger, tired of letting her betrayal define my present and future, tired of giving her that much power over my life. I forgave her, and then I let her go. I never responded to the email. So, where am I now? It's been 2 years since I called off my wedding. 2 years since I discovered Julia's affair and watched my entire future dissolve. I'm 32 years old, single, running a successful design business, living in a new apartment that has no memories of Julia attached to it.
I'm okay. More than okay, actually. I date occasionally, though I'll admit it, I'm more cautious now, slower to trust, more aware of red flags. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I've had a few relationships since Julia. Nothing serious yet, but that's by choice. I'm taking my time, being intentional, refusing to settle for anything less than real honesty and genuine partnership. My family asks sometimes if I'm ready to try again, to take that leap toward marriage and commitment. I don't know. I tell them honestly. I think I will be someday, but I'm not in a rush. Because here's what I learned from this whole experience. Love is not enough. I loved Julia. Completely. Deeply. Enough to spend my life with her. But love without integrity is worthless. Love without honesty is just a beautiful lie. And love without courage, the courage to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to do the right thing even when it's hard, will always crumble under pressure. Julia loved me. I believe that. But she loved her own ambitions and her fear of failure more. And when push came to shove, she chose the easy, unethical path over fighting to protect what we had. I won't make that mistake again. I won't love someone who doesn't have the courage to match their feelings with their actions. Sometimes people ask if I regret the relationship. 5 years with someone, 3 years engaged, all ending in betrayal and heartbreak. I don't regret it. Those years taught me what I want and what I absolutely won't tolerate. They taught me that I'm strong enough to walk away from something broken rather than desperately trying to fix it. They taught me that I deserve honesty and loyalty and respect. Would I do things differently if I could go back? Maybe I'd pay closer attention when Julia started acting strange. Maybe I'd push harder for couples counseling when the stress started affecting her. Maybe I'd have picked up on warning signs I missed. But ultimately, Julia's choices were her own. I couldn't have prevented them. I couldn't have loved her enough to make her choose differently. And that's not my failure. It's hers. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Julia did complete her degree in Germany, that she's working for an NGO now, doing economic development work in Eastern Europe. I'm glad. I hope she learned from what happened. I hope she's become someone who chooses integrity over convenience. As for Professor Morrison, he didn't just lose his job at that university. The scandal followed him. His academic reputation was destroyed. Last I heard, he was working in corporate training somewhere, far from the halls of academia. Good. People who abuse their power deserve to lose it. And me? I'm building a new future, one brick at a time. I've got my business, my friends, my family. I've got hobbies I'm passionate about and goals I'm working toward. I've got therapy tools for dealing with trust issues and relationship anxiety. I've got a life that's mine, shaped by my choices, not by someone else's betrayal. Most importantly, I've got hope. Hope that someday I'll meet someone who deserves my trust, someone who will choose me consistently and courageously, even when things get hard. Someone who understands that real love means doing the right thing even when it costs you something. I'll know her when I meet her, because she'll be nothing like Julia. She'll be honest when honesty is uncomfortable, brave when bravery requires sacrifice, loyal when loyalty is tested. And until I meet her, I'm perfectly okay being alone. Because being alone is infinitely better than being with someone who makes you feel alone.
So that's my story. The story of how I discovered my fiancé's betrayal, called off my wedding 3 months before the ceremony, and watched as the consequences destroyed her academic career and my professor's reputation. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty about reporting Morrison, if I regret that Julia lost her degree and had to leave the country. The answer is no. I didn't make Julia sleep with her professor. I didn't make Morrison abuse his position of power. They made those choices. I simply refused to be complicit in covering them up. Actions have consequences. Julia and Morrison learned that the hard way. But here's the thing, so did I. My actions had consequences too. I chose to walk away from someone I loved. I chose to prioritize my integrity and self-respect over trying to salvage a relationship built on lies. I chose the hard, painful path over the comfortable one. And the consequence of those choices? I get to look at myself in the mirror every day and know that I did the right thing, that I didn't compromise my values, that I didn't settle for less than I deserve. That's worth everything I lost. If you're going through something similar, if you've discovered a betrayal, if you're facing an impossible decision, if you're wondering whether you should stay or go, I can't tell you what to do. Your situation is unique, your relationship is different, your circumstances are your own. But I can tell you this. Trust yourself. Trust your gut. Trust that you deserve honesty and loyalty and respect. And trust that you're strong enough to survive whatever comes next. Because you are. I'm proof of that. 2 years ago, I thought my life was ending. I thought I'd never recover from the betrayal, never trust again, never find happiness. I was wrong. Life didn't end. It changed. And sometimes change, even painful change, is exactly what we need to become who we're meant to be. I'm not the same person I was when I met Julia in that coffee shop 5 years ago. I'm not even the same person I was when I discovered her affair 2 years ago. I'm stronger, wiser, more careful with my heart, but not closed off to love. I'm someone who knows his worth, who refuses to settle, who walks away from situations that don't serve him even when walking away hurts. I'm someone who survived betrayal and came out the other side. And if I can do it, so can you. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there who's going through something similar. You're not alone. The pain you're feeling is valid, and there is life after betrayal. A good life, maybe even a better one. Stay strong, choose yourself, and never, ever compromise your integrity for someone who won't do the same for you. This is Jordan, signing off.